years as the YouTube side of what I've done has got bigger and bigger. I've reverted back much more to being a journalist. I don't think journalists should be ideological about the news. I like to have people on who are ideologues, right and left. I like to be the ringmaster to their debates, as you said, the Jerry figure, if you like. But I've become far less, probably in my head, far less inclined to position myself to left or right. If you'd asked me 3-4 years ago, I'd have said, look, my natural politics are probably a little left of center. But the woke left has been so insane that rather like Bill Maher, I now get identified by the left as conservative because actually I'm just not prepared to entertain any of the woke madness.
Like I say, it's just affirms and confirms what we've been saying here on this channel for weeks. It's not that people are necessarily changing their politics or people are radicalizing themselves and going right of center. No, it's just that the left is taking so far off with some of this shit, it no longer represents some of its members, some of the people who call themselves Democrats, some of the people who call themselves left of center, liberals. They've gone so radical, so far left that in taking off, they've left a good percentage of their members behind. Right. And this is, again, it's just kind of furthering the point when we say the left eats itself. Like the party is so radical, so fast moving, so progressive. A radical leftist this week is getting eaten up by the radical leftist of next week. You're just not radical enough. If you're not keeping up, if you don't got the newest update, if you're not keeping up with the day-to-day politics, by next week, you'll be considered a conservative because you're not up on par with some of the radical leftist agenda that they've now shifted to. That's how fast they move.
And in that process, the pendulum
next
of
week,
my personal politics has probably shifted much more central, if not slightly center-right. But if you ask me what I am, I don't say a conservative or liberal or any of these things now. I say I'm a journalist, and my job is to actually hold everyone to account. And I think we do that in a way that's actually reasonably unique now in the world that we're in. I'm the one that holds all these big debates. They get very fiery, but we get everybody on, and I like that.
I actually think you are doing a tremendous job. I have to say that. I wasn't so keen on Piers 4 years ago, but I think this year you have actually proven yourself to be very even, just hosting both sides, allowing both people to speak, and not giving into sort of the ad hominem attacks, the things that are dismissive. Like you will call out someone and say, this is not debating, you're just calling this person names. So you
I also know, like someone like you, for example, right? You people ask about you and they say, well, she's this, and this. What I've learned is, don't necessarily buy into those narratives. Go and actually do your own research, work out what these people actually said, see the context in which they said it, see what their explanation was for why they said it. Often leads you to a very different conclusion.
And I love that Piers Morgan said that. That's why we try and have open or facilitate open conversation here, whether it be through chat, whether it be through the phone calls or the phone call-in shows that we host. We try and leave it to be a platform to where people could come up, share their opinions, and we can have a healthy back and forth, a healthy debate, some discourse, some meaningful discourse, agree to disagree on some points and find common ground on others, as I've previously said. But I can appreciate the fact that Piers said that, because just because I hold one position that you may consider universally conservative or Republican, it's not a monolith. I can hold that position while still being and holding other positions that one might consider liberal. Like there's some people that are conservatively, socially conservative, but economically liberal. So there's not necessarily a box you need to fit yourself in, a one size fits all when it comes to the political spectrum. That's why it's called a spectrum. You might be here on some issues, you might be there on some issues. Balance it out. You align somewhere within this whole array of what we know as politics. So it's definitely not a monolith on either side.
Conclusion than the ones that people like to easily pigeonhole people into. And that, again, is something I've had to learn. I used to be very judgmental as a newspaper editor in particular. And I think I've tried to be less judgmental now. I'll have lots of opinions, but when it comes to individuals in particular, let me just find out myself. And I think that is a healthy thing to do in a world where there's a lot ad hominem, a lot of twisting
I'm
going
sorry.
on.
I'm sorry, Chad. I'm still just laughing at Fox Chase's super chat. Oh my God. My man said, I miss being miserable. That yo, the self-deprecating shit is always hilarious to me. Always funny. You can always make me laugh with some of that type of shit, bro.
A lot of little cuts to the PR. I see it myself about me.
Mm.
And I often say to people, I know you think I'm really controversial, but what is the view of mine that you find most controversial? And when they try and answer, they really struggle because all they've seen is me on TikTok and someone shouting and blah, blah. They haven't actually listened to what my views are.
That's exactly right. And I think we saw that definitely. I know I defended you on my show a long time ago when everything went down and you got fired and the media was spitting this as if you were a racist. I mean, all of the things that you could have said about Piers Morgan, I was like, okay, he's suddenly a racist.
It was
now.
so preposterous. And in fact, worse than what happened to me was what happened to Sharon Osbourne, if you remember, at the talk, where Cheryl Underwood, and the show's now been canned, I'm pleased to say, because it really died that day when they did this, because it's a show called The Talk. You're supposed to be allowed to talk. Sharon just supported me. She didn't even say she agreed with what I said about Meghan Markle, although now, ironically, I'd have been fired for saying the complete opposite. If I said I believed Meghan Markle after the Oprah interview, people would now fire me for believing Pinocchio, right? So at the time, it seemed so contentious and outrageous to disbelieve her or to think a lot of what she was saying couldn't possibly be true. Now it doesn't seem that way. But Sharon, all she did was say, I support Piers. We've been friends for a long time. We worked again on America's Got Talent with Jerry. And she was just showing a bit of loyalty to me without actually getting into what I'd said. And then Cheryl was even supporting with these racist things he said. And she, hang on, what racist thing did he say? And it all blew up. She got blindsided, and she got fired from a talk, a job she loved, for having the audacity to support me, even though everyone knew I hadn't said a racist thing. Not one word. Cheryl Underwood couldn't actually say what it was I was supposed to have said that was racist. It was utterly shameful of CBS to do what they did.
All right, guys, and shout out Piers Morgan, Candace Owens. We're gonna bounce around, as you know I like to do. Let's get into this Tom Homan. Actually, before we get into this Tom Homan, Tucker Carlson, which is a great interview, by the way, let's get into this Tom Homan Fox News interview where he tells the Colorado police to hand these people to ICE, these people being these migrants, these asylum seekers. Because as you know, Colorado and some of their governing officials have said, like, oh, we're going to go to jail about this. We're going to get locked up about this. We're going to war for our migrants. All right. Tom Homan says he'd like a word, guys. Let's get into it.
Who brought the gang situation involving this very apartment complex to light, says she's tired of it being downplayed. She says this is not just another gang in Aurora, and this latest incident proves something needs to be done.
I will not be silenced on this issue. I will continue to speak up. I will not stand for this human suffering. I don't care if you are here legally, illegally, documented, undocumented.
The last thing I do,
fundamental right to feel safe in this city.
Now, on Tuesday, police were called out to a local apartment complex on reports of a home invasion. That's where they were told that a group of people entered the victims' homes, where they were then kidnapped and tortured. Now, one victim was stabbed. The other had their fingernails ripped out. This went on for 4 hours until the victims were released after promising not to call the authorities. Aurora's police chief says the victims, both Venezuelan migrants, bravely called anyway.
I want to make sure that anybody, whether documented or undocumented, knows that they can call law enforcement and will respond. There is no place in this country, there is no place in this city where somebody should be victimized or mistreated based upon their documentation status.
Now, federal law enforcement sources.
What if you're lacking documentation status? What if you are lacking proper documentation? You telling me those people get treated as a regular American citizen? We treat those people with parity. We treat those people no differently. That's where I got a problem at. That's when I gotta ask for clarification. What do you mean by that? Aurora police chief, we're not gonna treat these people no differently. We goddamn better if they're not documented migrants or they're not actual citizens. If these people are undocumented or lack proper documentation, that would allude to the fact that they're here illegally. You telling me you're going to stand for you're going to continue to be an asylum seeking city or a sanctuary city? You're going to continue to protect and harbor those people? Again, Tom Homan would like a word.
Tell Fox News, ICE, Homeland Security, and the DEA are involved in this latest round of arrests. They suspect at least 14 of them are TDA gang members. Harris.
Jeff Paul, thank you. Incoming Trump border czar Tom Homan is sending a message to Aurora's police chief.
I just saw your piece on the chief of police standing up and talking about this issue. What's lacking is an ICE person standing next to him shoulder to shoulder. So he's talking the talk, but let's hope he walks the walk and hand these people to ICE when he's done with them, because we can remove them not only from the community, but from the country. And if law enforcement officers don't help us do that, we're certainly going to do that starting January 21st.
You know, Kennedy, this was taken up a notch. I mean, torture. They're talking about dropping people off in the middle of the night. You heard that one lawmaker say they don't know where they are, pulling people's fingernails, tying people's hands behind their backs and beating them. I mean, this is gang warfare. That's what this is. I don't see how you confuse this with just regular police work.
Well, if they're going to bump it up a notch, then maybe law enforcement should bump it up a notch.
And guys, like the video. Let's get some more people on this conversation, man. We got a lot more videos to cover. A lot of stream left. It's not too late. Show some support. Like the video. Let's get some more people in here. You could also hit the three buttons in the upper right-hand corner. We appreciate you guys' support. Super chats can be shared. Thoughts, questions, comments, video suggestions as well. Go ahead and super chat into the stream. I'll pull your comment at the top. Like I got Fox Chases right now. Give you a shout out for supporting as well as reading, react to what you said. So we appreciate you guys. Let's keep this bad boy going.
With how they charge these criminals. I mean, because it sounds like terrorism to me. You know, if you've got torture and you're trying to influence a political outcome, I think you could make the case for terrorism here. And also, I don't understand whether they're elected officials or law enforcement. Like, I understand, you know, sort of hemming and hawing on immigration in general. I get that, you know, and the idea that, you know, in general, immigrant communities commit fewer crimes than natural born communities. Totally understand that. But this is not something where you're on the fence go, I don't know. I kind of think that we should protect these guys. You know, they're fun. They're so multicultural. They really add so much to the community. No, they are showing you they're the worst of the worst. They are displaying and advertising everything. These are the kind of people you should want out of the country. They make people scared. They make communities less safe. So
first person Trump chose after he got elected, I think it was the end of that week, right?
Yeah, I believe I was.
Guys, let's transition from that video into this one. I thought that was a one-on-one. It just so happened to be a panel. I think that was Fox. I forget what the name of the show is, but that was a one-on-one with Tom Homan. Let's transition to this actual one-on-one. Tom Homan, Tucker Carlson. He just made a point that Tom Homan was one of the first picks that Trump announced to his cabinet, and that actually says a lot. Tom Homan did originally work with Trump in 2016. He actually worked with Obama as well in his administration. 2 times retired, guys. So Tom Homan, 2 times retired. Again, worked with Obama, worked with Trump. Came out of retirement. All the benefits, all the luxuries of being retired, gave that up to come back and lead the charge on the southern border in the immigration crisis that we're facing here. So selfless work. I mean, obviously he's getting paid, all that good stuff, but bro, he was retired twice. Could be sitting somewhere nice, peachy, feet kicked up, but he wants to work with Trump because he sees a need. And he has the know-how, obviously, as well as the desire to fix the issue. And shout out. I feel like that's admirable, regardless of how you might see the man.
Can you summarize in one sentence what you plan to do with the job?
Well, look, we had a discussion that night, and He gave me 3 rails. So 3 things he wants me to do. Number 1 is secure the border.
Yeah.
Shut the border down. Number 2, run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen. And 3rd, he wants me to lead an effort to find the over 300,000 missing children that were trafficked into this country, and this administration cannot locate them.
So seal the border, deport the illegals, find the missing children,
right.
300,000.
Yes.
Let's go in order. Seal the border. What has happened? Do you have a sense now, over a month after Trump's victory, of just how big the invasion was under Biden? Do we know?
Well, we know that we can document over 10 million encounters, 10.5 that we can document. Then we can document over 2 million gotaways, right? These are known gotaways. What is a known gotaway? These are people we capture an image on drone video.
Is that in addition to the 10?
Yeah. So
at least 12 million people
have been encountered at our border. 10.5 been encountered. Over 2 we know they're a gotaway because we capture on drone traffic, video traffic, or sensor traffic. And Border Patrol's over 1 that couldn't respond. So we know there's at least 12.5 million people at that border.
So that's like New York plus Chicago.
It's a historic number, which is one of the reasons why I wake up pissed off every day, because we went for the most secure border in my lifetime. I started in 1984 as Border Patrol agent, worked for 6 presidents.
Damn.
Where did you start, by the way?
I was Border Patrol agent in Campo, California, San Diego sector.
Yep.
But to go for the most secure border of my lifetime on a
actually crazy. This man's life's work has been on the southern border, working as a Border Patrol agent, whether it be as a patrolman, all the way up into the upper brass, all the way up into being overseeing the border on a federal level. So Tom Homan has a life's work of experience, firsthand experience, and accounts that he shared, some chilling stories. And I think he's the perfect man for the job when you consider, his tough as nails approach, his unwavering stance on securing the border, tracking down these missing children, and initiating an attack an attack on the cartels. Honestly, perfect guy for the job. Perfect guy. Resume and experience is the perfect fit here for the role.
President Trump, based on data, right? That's just my opinion. That's data. Go for the most secure border of my lifetime to historic illegal immigration in one administration. That's by design. That's not mismanagement.
Yes.
That's by design.
What do you think the goal was?
I asked that a lot of people, why would anybody open the border up? I think Joe Biden's the first president in American history who came in office and unsecured the border. I worked for, 6 presidents. Obama and Clinton took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have, there's no way you can have strong national security if you don't have border security. You need to know what's coming, who's coming, and where it's coming, and why it's coming in. Joe Biden's first president came in office and unsecured the border. And people ask me all the time why. I think they see a future political benefit.
Old clips of Biden. I'm sorry. I'll go old clips of Hillary Clinton saying that the border needs to be secured. We need to be documenting and managing who crosses over the border. If they're here illegally, if they're here committing and purporting crimes, they need to get sent back. Old videos of Hillary Clinton saying that. So again, the progressive ultra radical left has since shifted their opinion and said, like, oh, borders are illegal. Now we should be letting anybody in. They are asylum seekers. They need our help. We should just be letting them in, burdening our cities. Blase, blah. But it is kind of funny, the pivot that we see a lot of times. And to make such a strong pivot and have an issue really with noticeable record highs in the last 4 years of migrants crossing over the southern border, it can only be pointed to the leadership that we've been under. And who is that, guys?
I think they think these people will be future Democratic voters, number one. Two, but we don't even have to get there, right, Tucker? I mean, when Biden signed over 9 executive orders getting rid of everything we did, he also overturned the Trump census rule, where millions of illegal aliens be counted in all these sanctuary cities, which is going to result in more seats in the House for the Dems and the reproportionate seats in the House.
Can that be undone?
Oh, yeah. I think President Trump needs to get, when he gets back in, when he needs to establish the other census rule, illegal aliens should not be counted in the census.
Well, yeah, because illegal foreign citizens, non-Americans, should not be able to determine how many members of Congress we have and where they sit.
Exactly. I think President Trump will reinstitute the game-changing policies he had during the first administration so we can secure the border. We did it before. This time we're going to finish the job.
How many came through Canada? Do you know?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know the number, depending on what sector you look at, is 600 to 800% increase on the northern border, specifically in upstate New York, where I grew up. And I still have a home up there. So I'm very familiar with that area. And I talk to Border Patrol chiefs up there all the time. Northern New York, it has a huge problem. And the problem with northern border, a lot of SIAs come through the northern border. They can afford to fly to Canada and cross the northern border, which is wide open because there's a lot of border and very few agents. So a lot of Indians, a lot of Pakistani, a lot of Turkish come through the northern border.
I mean, who organized this? You say it was by design. There are a lot of NGOs involved. The United Nations is involved. A bunch of religious charities, pretty evil religious charities, in my opinion, involved in this. But they seem to be coordinating with one another. What do we understand exactly what happened?
You know, we're still looking into it. I think under the Trump administration, there needs to be an investigation on what happened, who was involved. I know I've had numerous conversations with Mark Green, who's the chairman of Homeland Oversight. He plans on having some oversight hearings on this, specifically when it relates to the NGOs. You know, I think they were complicit in a lot of this illegal.
Guys, let's get the likes up. We got over almost 100 of y'all in here, man. We appreciate the support. It's been a great stream so far. I had a great time over here. Hopefully y'all are enjoying it on y'all end. If so, leave a like, drop a double tap on the screen for your boy, or you can hit the 3 buttons in the upper right hand corner. We appreciate the support, man. We're gonna keep this thing going. Guys, thoughts, questions, comments, anything you want to add to the stream, video suggestions as well can be shared. Go ahead and drop a super chat. We'll pull your comment up at the top of the screen, like I got Fox Chases right there. Give you a shout out for supporting, as well as read and react to it, man. We can keep this sucker going, keep it interactive, keep it engaging, and let's keep it fun, guys. Let's keep this thing going.
Immigration, and certainly the United Nations were south of our border working on this global illegal immigration to the United States. So I'm counting on the new Congress, which we now have control of both the House and the Senate, to conduct oversight hearings and hold people accountable. There's no way, again, there's no way this is mismanagement or incompetence. This is by design. And do I think Joe Biden had the expertise to do it? No, I think someone's pulling his strings. So this is something that needs to be fully investigated. People need to be held accountable because
they need to go to wreck the country. They need to go to prison.
They created the biggest national security vulnerability this nation's ever seen. We got a record number of people on terrorist watch lists being arrested. We got 2.2 million people. And this is my biggest issue I brought up for the last 2 years. It's just not about illegal immigration anymore. When you cause a crisis this big that overwhelms the Border Patrol, where many times 70% of agents were pulled off the line dealing with this humanitarian crisis, right? Changing diapers, making baby formula.
Beyond that, and I know he's not going to add it in, but it is relevant. They're pulling border agents from the northern border because of the issue at the southern border. So agents who are typically stationed at the northern border are being rerouted to go help and assist at the southern border because of the issue, because of the influx of people, just to address some of these issues that he's talking about. And it's not even necessarily filtering and checking documentation. It's humanitarian effort, like he said. Making formula, making hospital runs. He's going to continue and go into details about what exactly they're doing, but these people are acting outside of their job just because there's so many migrants they can't even do their actual assigned duties. It's almost a humanitarian crisis going on because they've sent so many people. They need aid, and the only people there stationed to do it are these Border Patrol agents. They can't even do their damn job.
Formula, making hospital runs, doing that humanitarian mission, leaving 30% of our Homeland Security officials left securing the border. There was times in the last 2 years where 100% of border police were pulled off the line, such as in El Paso, because when they got overcrowded, this administration said, wait, we can't have overcrowding. That's a bad optic. So let's pull every agent off the line, process as quick as possible, release as quick as possible, because if there's no overcrowding, there's nothing to see here. The border is still secure. So when you overrun the border patrol, that's when all the bad things happen. That's when we got 2.2 million gotaways, right? That's when the fentanyl comes across to kill 250,000 Americans. That's why sex trafficking of women and children is up 600%. That's why the number of migrant deaths is at a historic high. So this, what people call this innocent illegal immigration crisis, made a lot of bad things happen because the Border Patrol was strictly overwhelmed and couldn't do the national security.
Well, it changed the culture of the United States, which is worse than any of the things that and more permanent than any of the things you listed. You can't run in and change people's ancient culture. I've been here for 250 years. You can't do that. No, it's the worst crime ever committed against the U.S., worse than the Civil War, in my opinion. But the question is, like, who did this and why? So the United Nations, we pay the largest share of the UN budget. You know, we should have some ability to control what the UN does, but they commit this act of war against us. Do we know who did at the UN and why?
I do not, but
NATO as well, guys. We pay the largest share of the NATO budget as well. Pretty much primarily funded by United States, NATO and the UN. Funny how that works.
Something that's going to be.
They wanted to be mad at Trump for trying to pull us out of NATO in 2016.
I believe it should be investigated. I'm pushing people I'm coming to the administration with that we need to investigate it. Again, I've talked to numerous representatives on the Hill that swear they're going to have hearings.
Imagine if we had been pulled out of NATO in 2016. This whole Ukrainian-Russian conflict, shit, wouldn't have been our battle. Wouldn't have been our fight because America's not funding them, right? It's NATO. It's NATO.
On this. And we need to. American people need to know exactly what happened, who is responsible.
Do you think that the fentanyl traffickers, known as the cartels, I guess, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'd like to ask you, actually, but you keep reading and hearing that they have control of parts of the southwestern United States. First of all, what is a cartel? Who are they? Where are they from? And do you think that's true?
Well, the criminal cartels in Mexico, they are born out of the narcotics smuggling industry in Mexico, and they're powerful. Look, they're like a Fortune 500 company.
Yes.
They're just not a gang anymore, right? Yeah, Jalisco cartels they're in over 45 countries of the world, right? And not only are they responsible for moving narcotics in this country,
Shout out. No, I was just saying, appreciate you guys. Shout out Hellbat 12, $2. Playing Big Brother of the world is stupid. But as well, I was adding, best believe these cartels have members operating in high places, have infiltrated the highest levels of government in Mexico as well as Venezuela. If not having actual members of the cartel positioned in these positions or positioned within the government. So they have a large level of influence, control, obviously oversight. So it is a dangerous issue when fully analyzing like the cartel, their reach, their influence. And yeah, they're operating like a Fortune 500. They got money. They got big funds, big bucks.
They're also they're currently in every major city in the United States because not only are they smuggling drugs in the United States.
Hellbat, pull me back on an old bet we made. That is hilarious.
Taking over distribution within the United States, right? So again, and I said this at the RNC, and President Trump agrees with me. These criminal cartels have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined, right?
And every war, more than the Second World War.
So that's why they need to be designated terrorist organizations and wiped off the face of the earth. And it's going to take the United States to do it. Mexico has failed to do it, even if they tried to do it. Bottom line is much of the Mexican military, much of the Mexican law enforcement, much of the Mexican government's corrupt. That's just a fact.
Well, then why? Okay, so I noticed that the incoming administration just basically toppled the prime minister of Canada, who's a thoroughly evil person called Justin Trudeau, and by threatening tariffs. They kind of fixed the Canada problem. Trump fixed it in about, 20 minutes. But how much more leverage do we have over Mexico? I mean, we're the entire economy of Mexico. Why don't we do that with Mexico?
Well, we are. President Trump has threatened tariffs, and the president seems to say she's going to help. We'll see if her actions match her words. But President Trump has a lot of power over Mexico. Look, the tariffs alone, Mexico needs us more than we need them, right? And look, I'm not saying every cop, every soldier, every politician in Mexico is corrupt, but many are. That's just a fact. When I was ICE director, we had vetted units we worked with. Law enforcement down there, we vetted them so we can work with them. But we didn't even tell the vetted units everything we know because we just couldn't be sure, right? But President Trump has a lot of leverage. Remember, when I became board slave in 1984, one of my first assignments out of the academy was protecting a port of entry in Tecate, California, because we had a DEA agent that was tortured and murdered, Kiki Camarena. I think you remember.
I remember very well.
And they wouldn't help us to identify and turn over the people responsible. Ronald Reagan shut down the port of entries. And what, it took them 2 days? All of a sudden, we know who committed the crime. And so President Trump can obviously do that. He can end all the visas, end the tourist visas, the business visas. There's a lot of power he has over Mexico, and he needs. President Trump's willing to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereignty and protect this country, and he's ready to do it. He proved it the first time, when Remain in Mexico program. Mexico didn't want to do that. Third safe country agreements. Mexico didn't want to do that. They didn't want to put 10,000 military on their border. Where President Trump threatened them with tariffs, and they came to the table.
There are so many nice Mexican people. I mean, most Mexican people I've met, I really like. That we forget that the government's very anti-American, is not our ally in any sense. We spend all this energy being mad at Assad, who cares? And we live next to this country that's helping to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. No one ever says anything about it. Don't you think it would be worth shifting some of that emotional energy and military resources to countries right next to us who are hurting us?
I'm 100% with you. And that's why I've been pushing to Mexico to come to the table and be accountable. It's against the law in Mexico to traffic in women and children, but they don't do anything about it. It's against the law in Mexico to transit through that country. If you're from another country, without a transit visa, but they allow it. I mean, look at the Beast, the big train that thousands of people came up every weekend. They didn't do anything until President Trump got in office and had him put a stop to it. I mean, but the good thing is a lot of countries are willing to come to the table right now. Mexico says they're going to. Let's see what they do. I'll be deeply involved in those conversations. Panama wants to come to the table and help the United States secure our border by shutting down the Darien Gap. This administration said they're going to do it. Secretary Mayorkas said he was going to do it. Panama never got any funding to do it. They never got anything done with this administration. They were coming to the table again. We will shut down the Darien Gap, but please help us. We will help them. Darien Gap, shutting the Darien Gap down would be a huge game changer on illegal migration to this country.
But again, given the economic leverage the United States has, that shouldn't take more than a weekend, right?
It's going to be pretty quick. I mean, we're going to come to the table what we need Mexico to do. Remain in Mexico program, a game changer. That needs to happen quickly. That was a game changer because after about 2 months, they stopped coming. They stopped coming because
they knew their ass was going to get sent back. And that's what having a standard at the border does. It lets would-be intruders or would-be people who plan on encroaching our border know that they're not going to be able to cross over willy-nilly. When you come, you're going to be vetted. When you come, we have Border Patrol agents stationed there ready to do their job. Properly vet, properly check documentation. Are you allowed to come? I mean, where are you coming from? What, you know what I'm saying? When there's a standard at the border, it negates people subjecting themselves to some pretty gnarly things as well. That's an under-highlighted fact. But it negates people from even trying. Like, I'm not gonna go over there when I know I'm gonna get sent back. That's exactly what having a standard at the border does. It actually saves lives. Well, let's transition back into this Piers Morgan Candace Owens. We're gonna keep it, dancing back and forth, guys. We're gonna have some fun with it.
Sharon that day. And the fallout from that whole Oprah interview, if you watch the whole sequence of events, really a shocking attack on freedom of speech is really what it came down to. You could say something right now. I'm entitled to say, I don't believe you.
Right.
And you're entitled to say, well, I'm right because boom, 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 boom. But the idea that your first reaction is, if you don't believe me, you're racist because I'm not white. So, sorry, what? That's the criteria? I'm not allowed to disbelieve you because of your skin color? That's how preposterous it was.
You know what? It's really interesting because obviously I kind of made my mark as a Black woman who was anti-BLM from the very beginning because I saw this. I saw this budding and people who sort of were taking this perspective that Black people became untouchable after the George Floyd. They're allowed to steal a flat screen TV from Target. You can't criticize that. And if you do, it's because you're a racist, not because you have some basic dignity and morals. But I'm seeing the same thing now. It kind of has changed, definitely post October 7th. And I've seen those same accusations where it's like, okay, well, if you're critiquing this foreign nation and Bibi Netanyahu, of course, none of us would want our Jewish friends to be harassed. But it's the exact same woke game of,
if you criticize the Israeli government, you must be anti-Semitic.
Yeah, you hate Jews.
Right? And it works the other way too. I see it on both sides, but this is where we've got to. And it's the same with the trans debate about trans athletes in women's sport. We may get to that, but I felt very strongly about that any attempt to challenge the accepted view that this is fair and rational to allow biological men to put their hands up, say they're women and compete in women's sport and hammer women into the ground, literally with their fists in boxing rings in the Olympics. The idea that if you do that, you are transphobic, that you have a hatred of trans people, I just find completely outrageous. And it's being used more and more by the woke left as a form of, as Elon calls it, a form of communism, really. This is communism at bay. I call it fascism. It's the same kind of thing in the sense of it's a group of militant people who are trying to shut down any dissent, trying to make everyone see the world through their narrow prism, be it communism or fascism. It's the same mindset. And we will destroy people who do not conform to what we have laid down is the new rule book for life. And people who believe in freedom of speech and freedom and democracy, you have to fight this with every inch of your life. Because if we don't, we will go down that.
And that's not just people on the conservative side. That's not just people on the right. There's people on the left who are also coming to that realization of like, wow, goddamn, they're going a little bit too far with some of this stuff. Like some of my values are no longer being represented with how far they've gone, how progressive they are, how radical some of their views and standpoints have gotten. There's people on the left who are for free speech. There's people on the left who are for smaller, moderated sized government. Not everybody's just this radical pro-LGBTQ plus pink-haired goblin. Like there is some moderates on the left. There's some sensible people on the left who have this political cycle low-key been awakened to the fact or come to the realization of exactly what Piers just said. Like, yo, like, I ain't gonna lie, y'all gone too far. What the hell? Like, where are we at with some of this? And the left eats itself. Like you're pushing these people away. People who have been lifelong Democrats, vote blue no matter who. You're pushing these people not to necessarily the conservative side, but you're pushing these people away from where your party is headed.
Path of communism, of fascism, of that control world that they want. And that way madness lies.
All right, guys, taking a moment to remind you about Preborn, because every baby's life is a precious gift full of potential and dreams that are waiting to unfold. That's why Preborn, the nation's largest pro-life organization, is on the front lines for at-risk babies and mothers that are send up pound. Again, that's inaway.com/Candace. Actually going back to your point about Sharon, the peer pressure that you're speaking about at the top it's really important to speak to this, because in a way, you either conform or you get fired once you get to a certain level in life. And we obviously saw this with you. It's like either you say good things about Meghan Markle because right now we're at the tail end of BLM and you can't insult a woman who's doesn't even, if I'm looking objectively, look Black. I wouldn't have guessed she was Black if she didn't offer it. But you're seeing that with Sharon Osbourne. It's like, okay, well, you now have to make a decision. Are you going to be a decent human being and a good friend and be honest about the fact that you know this man, you've known him for years, and he's not a racist? Or are you going to say, well, Piers shouldn't have said the thing, piece of your soul dies, but at least you get to keep your career.
Right.
We're seeing people confronted with that.
Well, I was told very categorically by ITV here, who are the NBC of the UK, they said, look, if you apologize for disbelieving her, you can keep your job. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that, which I think they probably knew. And I literally left that afternoon. I mean, it was a fait accompli. You apologize, you keep the job. In other words, you grovel to Meghan Markle, who, unbeknown to me, had written a personal letter to the chief executive of the company, who was a woman, and had said to her, I write to you as a woman and as a mother. You have to fire him. And I wasn't told that in the deliberations that went on that day. Had I known that, I would have gone public with the whole thing and had a very different argument with them. I would have just dug my heels in and went, you're going to really allow this Duchess to decide who works at ITV? I only found this out after the event 2 days later. That would have changed how things played out quite significantly. But what was interesting was, in the moment, it was also febrile. It was kind of chaotic and mayhem, and it was leading the news and everything else. And I just remember it turned on a dime in about 24 hours. I began walking around. I felt like the Pied Piper. There were literally people, bus drivers tooting horns, cab drivers cheering me, public coming across roads to hug me, to shake my hand, because they understood that actually what it was about was a battle for free speech. And they understood that if you want to be actually British, or American obviously, but if you want to be British, actually you've got to fight for free speech. This is what Churchill fought the Nazis about: freedom and democracy and free speech. People lost their lives on battlefields so that we have the right to actually